Trump is set to deliver his first State of the Union address on January 30th. That's going to be fun. And Trump also sending a tweet out the other day saying time for change in Iran. President Trump on Monday said that it's time for change in Iran. His tweet said, Iran is failing at every level despite the terrible deal made with them by the Obama administration. He said in his tweet, the great Iranian people have been repressed for far too many years. They are hungry for food and for freedom, along with human rights. The wealth of Iran is being looted. He added, time for change. Joining us now to try to explain this Iranian situation, our good friend from Cairo, live in Cairo, Edward Yeranian. Edward is a longtime CBS radio correspondent and also part of the Voice of America and the John Fredericks Show, Man in the Middle East, as we continue to expand. Edward, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Great to have you back, man.
Same to you, John. Thank you for having me all these 7 years you've been on the air. I really appreciate it as well.
You've been a staple for us. You've been here for 7 years. Anyway, Edward, I want to thank you for sticking with us for all this time. You've been with me since day one. Can you believe, Edward, it's been 7 years I've been on the air? Can you believe it?
No, it's hard to believe. Very
7
hard
years.
to believe it's been that long.
I know. Now, when are you coming back to the States?
Wow. It's at the mercy of the events that the good Lord puts in front of us. God only knows.
Well, normally you come back for a week, 2 weeks in the summer, right?
Yeah. This year, Voice of America closed our office, so I had to be here for that.
All right. Well, hopefully you get here, and I'll see you when I'm in D.C. Just be sure that I know. Okay. What's going on in Iran? Give us the rundown.
Well, up until now, the news media is reporting out of Iran that there are at least 20 people. One of the news channels was saying 22 who have been killed in protests, 6 days of protests. They were also saying that 20 different Iranian cities have been hit by these protests. The two largest that we've been watching are Kermanshah, which is close to Iraq, and Mashhad, which is Iran's second largest city, which is near the borders of Afghanistan and Tajikistan. So smaller cities, not like as much in Tehran as we saw in 2009 during the last major protests. Isfahan, the last couple of days, a smaller town called Najabad outside of Isfahan. The supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, was lashing out today, saying that the enemies of Iran, the intelligence agencies, foreign countries, outside parties, I think he meant the People's Mujahideen, which is based in Paris, the Miriam Rajavi faction, and the former Shah's son, who is based in Virginia. So definitely a lot of things taking place, people angry about the economy, and some measure of outside pressure. The BBC Persian service has been pumping up the demonstration, so has the Voice of America Persian service, Radio Farda, which is put out by Radio Free Europe. What can I say? Certainly the president, using his bully pulpit, has undoubtedly pushed some people who are on the fence into the streets, no doubt. Perhaps it'll push more into the streets if they get the sense that the president is supporting them. I think, or what we heard the last time around in 2009, was that a lot of people gave up because President Obama stopped supporting them. That's what they themselves were saying. So this time it's not clear, but it looks like President Trump is supporting the demonstrators. Okay, so what does this mean? I mean, they're demonstrating, obviously, in Iran because they don't like the economy. They don't like their lack of freedom. They don't like what is happening with the Iranian government. The last time they had these protests, the Obama administration really didn't do anything to help them. The president now tweeting out that he's in favor of this continuing. But, I mean, in order to get regime change there, I mean, you've got the Ayatollah and all that. I mean, how tough is that? I mean, what kind of an impact could this actually
have potentially, Edward Yeranian?
Well, certainly you need a lot more pressure from the people than in 1953 when the coup against the Iranian prime minister that we didn't like, Mossadegh, succeeded. There were stories, the chap who was working for the CIA who was behind it at the time said that, well, we used just a few cars and we pulled down the government. I don't think that'll happen today. Certainly that was, another era. This government has many tools of repression. It has water cannons, lots of water cannons, several paramilitary police forces, the Basij, the Revolutionary Guard. Until now, the government has not called out the Revolutionary Guard in the capital, Tehran, because it hasn't reached that level, that crescendo where they would need to do that. But this is wintertime also, so a lot of people are staying in their houses, and if they see that the demonstrations are picking up steam, a lot of people will probably join them.
When you say a lot of people will join them, like, are we going to get a Tiananmen Square type of scenario here? Would you see the Iranian government coming in with troops, tanks, that kind of thing? Or do you think that this would just be, I mean, when you look back at the Arab Spring and you see some of the protests they had there, I mean, look what it caused in Syria, Libya, etc. I mean, do you see, is there any way we could get to that state in Iran with these protests, Edward Yeranian?
They've refined their techniques against demonstrations since the last successful ones. They use a lot of paramilitary police on motorbikes, and I'm sure you've probably seen these videos of them chasing down people in the streets of Tehran on their motorbikes. So they can pick off the fringes of demonstrations, and I think they have the tools of repression to put them down unless they reach a certain level. Now, do I see that happening? In all honesty, I don't. But I'm not saying I don't want to see it happen. I think Ayatollah Khamenei is a nasty man. I probably shouldn't be saying that as a journalist, but I think he is. And I wouldn't be sorry if he were to leave the stage, the world arena. But at this point, I don't see in the middle of winter demonstrations in Iran reaching that level because a lot of times in the summer it's easier to bring people out in the streets. And the last demonstrations took place in June after the presidential elections in Iran in 2009.
All right, so what you're saying is this basically is all to do about nothing. We're not going to see any change. It's not going to rise to a level where you might get troops in the streets. And from what you're saying, Edward, it looks like the Iranian government is prepared for this, accustomed to this. They have ways of dealing with it. Doesn't create a spectacle for BBC or for somebody or Sky Network or other networks out there that could, put all this on TV, right?
Well, that's true. I'd like to be wrong. I'd like to say 6 months down the road, hey, I was wrong. But that's what I see right now. You also have a lot of outside parties that have an interest in interfering here, so they could pump up the situation. You have the Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, which is extremely upset with Iran. You've got Arab populations inside of Iran in Kermanshah. That's the town where it appears to have started in Baluchistan. You have also populations that are the Kurds who are not happy with the government, and the religious hardliners who control the situation. They're very unpopular with just about everybody. So, I mean, there's a lot of latent anger and discontent that could be drawn upon if people see that it's gaining momentum.
All right, we'll have to keep our eye on this and see how it plays out. Edward, I'm going to probably have you back tomorrow to talk about this Chinese document that was put in the hands or got in the hands of a newspaper in D.C. called the Washington Free Beacon that shows that the Chinese are lying to us about their involvement in sanctions with North Korea. We'll talk about that tomorrow. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. I want to thank Eddie Yeranian for being with us. Eddie, I think you're on Twitter now, aren't you?
Yes, John.
What's your Twitter handle?
Beibei1, which is Beibei is the airport code for Beirut, Beybey, and the numeral 1.
Beibei1. All right.